Good morning and welcome. This is Bob Pace, your host, and I have a secret. It's called How to Fight CPS and Win. And you're probably wondering yourself, fight? Well, we have an organization, and I'm calling from California, Southern California. And this organization, CPS, which is a branch of social services called the Child Protection Services, it has different names in different states, but they have something in common. I've been, having people come and talk on the show, and I have over 100 people that I've interviewed on the show, and they're from all parts of the country. What they're talking about, and I like to hear good and bad, is their CPS case. And CPS is an agency that protects your children. Now, and watch is a watchdog. It's a watch organization. It's a good thing to have because children are abused, there's no question, or neglected. There's two things that they do. They look for abused children or neglected children, and also they look for sexual exploitation of children too. We have big problems with that, especially where I live. Um, it's the number one spot to abduct children. I don't know if it's because of the income level or something in there or whatever it is, but they always have that. Now, to get started on this show, this is a live broadcast through Facebook, and it's beamed on YouTube, and so it's very live. And there's lots of things you can do to interact with the show. One, you have a area that you can actually text me a question, and it'll come on the screen. I'll read it, and I'll try to answer you the question. Or if you want to call and speak to me right away on my phone, you can call at 563-999-3480. That's called Block Talk Radio. And what that does is that it connects me to my phone, and then on my phone, what I will do is turn it's on the speaker, and then what I'll do is hold it to my microphone um, on my headset, and then you can go ahead and say what you want to say. Another good way is to call 888-888-6582. That is the office phone number. That's not my number, but that's the office number. And there you can say, hey, I want to be a guest on Bob Pace's show. It's really important you mention my name when you call the office. Also, we have an attorney that produces this show. Um, his name is Vincent W. Davis. He has a law firm. He has a lot of professional attorneys. His expertise is family law. He's a professional family law attorney with years and years of experience. He's also a trial attorney, so he can do trials. He is also able to do civil lawsuits against CPS. You probably say, why? Well, sometimes they're bad people in CPS, and he can do civil lawsuits there. So, with that being said, he can do the lawsuit there. Now, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm somebody that is 74 years old now. When I got involved in CPS, and yes, I was involved in CPS, and yes, I was duped and taken advantage of, and yes, I made the number one mistake. I didn't have an attorney. But that happened in 2015. It's 2024. So my case lasted 3 years, the end of 2017. And I lost everything. I lost my home. It was a big mess. And I can talk to you about my case throughout the show because I want to talk about topics that you may be interested in and so forth. But anyway, I really encourage you to call in to be a guest speaker or to call me live. The numbers are on the screen. They're right there. I think here, I'm trying to get my finger to point to numbers. There's one number, and then there is the other number. And Vincent will give you a 30-minute to 1 hour free consultation, and he'll talk about strategies, things you need to know, because you'll find out that working in CPS, you have to be able to navigate the complex laws. you're going to be beneath a lot of stress. Your whole livelihood has been interrupted. And some of it's necessary. Some of the kids are neglected. Sometimes people lose um, their emotions and they'll slam a child against the wall or they'll hurt them unnecessary. So there's truth that we need this protection. But sad to say that through my case and through the numerous other cases in different states, and I mean, yesterday they were talking from Utah, and then I had West Virginia, Virginia, Minnesota, Texas, even the uh, Indian children. And I'd like to talk about that one subject because um, you probably look at me and says, "Oh, he's not an Indian." Well, my great great grandmother was a Lakota Sioux, full blooded on the Rosebud Reservation. In '72, I visited my tribe. The records, by the way, are not very well kept. I've been working with the Lakota University and other places. They're trying to find my grandmother. My grandmother was married to my great grandfather, who was a Viking. He's a Norwegian from Norway, from a little town called Bergen, and he has Viking blood in him, by the way. So he had this big blonde hair, and I guess the dominant gene and the face stuff. Where my grandmother had brown hair, and my great grandmother, and she lived on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. The Black Hills are nearby. That's where the Lakota Sioux's livelihood. At one time, they had all of Dakota, Montana, and so forth. There's been so many injustices done to the American Indians, and I don't want to talk about it. I mean, there's been the American Indian Movement, AIM, and then there has been a lot of things that have happened. I mean, I was there in '72, close to when they had the Wounded Knee incident. That's where the federal authorities. Well, right now, as it stands, all the Indians have reservations, and their lands are sacred to them. They're responsible of the tribe to take care of. Federal government can't go into their lands and enforce state laws and other kinds of laws. This is can be a good thing, especially in California. There's been laws passed and so forth. You probably say, well, what's so important about this? Well, and again, I do research, and there's a lot of things that you can research on Google. And in the Department of Social Services, there's a section called the California Indian Child Welfare, state plan. By the way, it's federal. It's not necessarily all California, but they have a welfare program to protect the Indian children. And sad to say, the Indian children were being abused and taken advantage of, not only by the parents, sometimes the parents bad thing, but also by CPS, Child Protection Agency. Well, how can they be? Well, as I talk more further in there, um, there's a thing called the Indian Child Welfare Act. It's called ICWA. And that's something that if you have any children or any blood and you think if you're registered or could be registered as a Native American Indian. Now, what I mean by Native American Indian, and people sometimes will take this wrong. If you're born in the United States, you're a native. You're a native of the United States. You're a native of North America. The American Indians are native. They are considered the first people. And I'm not talking about prehistoric time when there was Neanderthal man and all the other people there, but they were the first, and I'm going to call civilized, because they knew how to take care of the land. They know how to use everything, and they were good to each other. Yes, there was warring tribes, but they came through the Siberian Straits and settled first in Alaska, then moved down through Canada, then moved down in North America, down in Southwest, down in Arizona. Then they went into the Mexico area, the Central America area, the South America area, and there they mixed with the Spaniards, who were doing a lot of exploring. The Spaniards, the Portuguese, so forth, were a lot of explorers. And, so were the Vikings. I don't want to forget those people. And the Vikings were the first Europeans to discover North America. Not Christopher Columbus. I don't want to put him down, but he had some bad things he did. He was a pretty abusive kind of guy. But we're taught in school that he discovered America. He discovered the West Indies, and he thought he was that North America, but it's the Vikings did, and there's traits of the Vikings as far west as the Mississippi, and so forth. Leif Erikson is one of those Vikings. They first went over to Iceland, then Greenland, and then over to um, North America, up and above Maine, and so forth. There's even Viking artifacts in Rhode Island and so forth that I've personally seen. And so, going back to the ICWA, ICWA will protect the Indian children because it's done by the tribe itself. It's not done by CPS. They uh, the, there's a law, and they have a lot of laws in California that were signed, and so in 1979, there was the ICWA law where it said that if you're registered or could be registered a Native American Indian, the tribe would take care of you, and the federal government, social services, and CPS could not intervene. And that can work for you because I hate to say it, in my case, it could have probably helped my kids out a lot on that. So um, they further in California, they passed a law in 2016, and the federal issued a regulations. And so a lot of changes are because a lot of the American Native Indians in California are being abused by parents and also abused by CPS, and things like foster care, things I'll talk about, shelters, group homes, foster care, adoption. These are all similar things that come along when you're going through the program and so forth. But it's very important if you have that Native Indian heritage, you look into it when you're being investigated by CPS because they'll turn you over to the tribe, and the tribe will set up a plan. And I think the tribe's a lot more fair and honest with intervening and protecting your children and so forth. And so it's very important that you look into that. I tried to, but CPS tried to discourage me, and they didn't really do an active job of contacting the tribe. I told them the information, and of course, my tribe, the Lakota Sioux, didn't have a written history. Everything is told by stories. The only battle that the Native American Indians won was the Battle of Little Bighorn, and they defeated a very, very remarkable and a hero of the Southwest, General George Armstrong Custer. And he was very well after the Civil War. During the Civil War, he did some really fantastic charges and stuff, but he did some bad things. He did. There's a lot of bad things. I know that President Grant tried to help out and so forth, and but there's a lot of broken promises, a lot of broken treaties. They have been abused. They're still being abused today. I don't want anybody forget that. And their children. It's very important that the native children are protected and so forth. So ICWA will provide active efforts to the family. They'll identify a place that fits under the ICWA preferences. They'll notify I should say ICWA, this is CPS. They'll notify the child's tribe and the child's parents of the child's custody proceeding. Well, they didn't do that for me. Working actively to involve the child's child and the child's parents in the proceeding. And so that's an area that a lot of people forget about. A lot of people forget about um, the ICWA thing. So that's my talk about ICWA, the Native American Indian stuff. So as I talk to you all out there, I know that you probably are hurting big, big time. I am still hurting to this moment, this time, because I had 3 children, and my family is divided into 2 parts. There's my older group of kids, which are 3 of them. There are 2 girls and a boy. And you're probably wondering, um, the older part. So, yes, I've been married twice. My firstborn uh, was taken from me at age 3. Um, through allegations that are false. And I will talk about allegations because allegations are used in alienation. And alienation is a new buzzword that I've been using a lot. There's parent alienation, there is um, family alienation. And what alienation means is to separate or put down another person. So usually that's typical of parents. One parent will be putting the other parent down to make them look bad so the kids look bad. And that's one of the biggest mistakes we do with our children. Is that, and I learned through this because my wife and I did argue and we did yell and shout, and that was a negative thing. That's domestic violence. And it doesn't have to be physical, but we would disagree. And our disagreement and yelling and everything all stemmed around money. And I hate to say it, I had a sort of a domino effect with me. At age 60, I lost my job through no fault of my own. I had been working since age 15, so I had many years. And because the market in 2007, the banks went bellied up, and that was because of predatory loans, loans that are given out to people that shouldn't have qualified for them because the lenders raise the income on the paperwork. They lied stuff because they're interested in making money. Because if you refinance or finance, they get a bonus. And so there's a big scam, and one of the biggest lenders uh, went uh, bankrupt and was taken over by another big banking financial institute that I later sued. I won my case, but all I got was $5,000 for my efforts, and that was sad because I had this damn ripple effect. Also, my retirement was cut in half. I'd saved up a lot of money when you work 40 some years, and it was ruined. And you probably say, well, why do you lose your job? You sound so great, or whatever. It's like that. It wasn't because of me. I had accumulated a lot of work for the company that I was working for. And at that time, the state of California was going through hard times. They were one of the first states that almost came close to bankruptcy. I know the city of Detroit in Michigan was going to bankruptcy, but California was going there. And at that time, the governor, and you probably knew who the governor was because he lived in a wedded tent and smoked cigars. And he said the famous things, I'll be back. Anyway, he's a nice guy. I met him. But he was trying to do creative financing. So I worked in heavy highway, civil engineering, road construction, and I acquired a lot of jobs as being a senior estimator. And, I generate a lot of work. I generate close to $150 million a year. Well, this one company I was working for, I had all these contracts. And these contracts were awarded, and they're small contracts because we were set up as a small business. And these contracts were awarded, but they wanted to place an IOU on them. And when you place an IOU, the governor thought he could use public funds and said, oh, well, I'm not taking away your public funds. He just said it'll be delay for you doing the job. Well, if you can imagine in 2010 how hard the economy was to do a job in the banks. And I went to the banks. I said, hey, banks, can I get a credit line? And they laughed at you because they were so strict now. They wouldn't give me credit lines, even though I had things written for the state of California to do this work. Also, the governor was reducing some departments. And one of the departments he hit was social services. And you're probably, whoa, what do you mean social services? We need social services. That was created to help family in needs, to help our children and so forth. But there was all these social workers that were in their 30s and 40s making good salaries with a lot of great experience. And they were good social workers. They really did think about the family. It was not a money making thing as it is today. Well, there was layoffs, and they didn't want to pay them the money that they're getting paid, and they didn't want them more experience. So they filled the void on the social service with young people. And there's nothing wrong with young people, but as you know, when you're young, you don't have the experience. So how can you at age 21, 22, fresh from school, you went to college or community college, and have the backgrounds in social services, how can you have the experience of how to reunify a family, how to do family plans, how to put the family? I mean, you don't have that knowledge. And I think you should be able to ride with somebody experienced for 10 years, get that experience, and then you can be on your own. But they weren't doing that. Also, I found out that the organization that I was dealing with, and that was in Orange County, had a Taj Mahal of a building. If you go by and see the building, it's the most state of art building anywhere in the world, and it has to be fed. I mean, money wise, I had problems in the very beginning. They were doing things that are illegal, wrong, and I started writing, emails to the social workers, and then the social workers supervisors, and then their supervisors, and then to managers. I even had a meeting with the head honcho to talk about how serious and how bad things were. And he did nothing. They did nothing because what they are doing. And I'm going to tell you right now, this may alarm you, but in every state I've found this to be true, that their purpose is to get your family separated. It isn't family reunification. They want to come up, and they're going to come up with things called allegations. And these allegations are hearsay, meaning that anybody can call in and say, um, this guy or this woman is beating their children up or is not taking care of them, no clothing, don't go to school, don't pay utility bills, anything you can think of. And a lot of it is retaliation because sometimes, and I found this out, that families retaliate against each other. And this was my wife's side of the family. There are a group of individuals that we later found through the process, things like that, should have been investigated by CPS when my wife was growing up. My wife was abused as a child. She had her mother do discipline like pouring hot coffee or doing the hot water. One time she almost drowned because no one went in to get her. She was not a very good swimmer and no one seemed to care, something like that. Her brother abused her sexually, and that's wrong. And he should have been reported. Her oldest sister, who was 18 at the time, took her to a concert. Her parents, I guess, said it was okay. But at 15, you shouldn't go to a concert, especially she was left alone because they went to the bathroom and her sister's friend was with her and they went in the bathroom and then they came out and they forgot about her and she came out and she's, left about there. I guess at concerts people do get tendency to get high and stuff and everything. But first of all, as a parent, I didn't allow my daughter to go to a concert at 15. If I went to a concert, I had to come along and stuff like that. So I was definitely, I didn't want anything to happen to her. Well, anyway, two guys saw her, and she was said they would help her find her way. Instead, they took her to the bushes because the concert was outdoors, and they raped her, and that was wrong. Her first dealing with sex was a rape. Her first child was from sex, and like uh, uh, she, could have had an abortion, but she wanted to give the child up for adoption, and it was really, really, really hard. And so um, she gave up the child for adoption. The only positive thing is that child turned out to be great. He was adopted by a local family in the area. Then at age 20, he got in touch with his biological mother, my wife, and he was welcomed into our family, sort of like an adopted son. I mean, I took him out surfing, and his birthday come rolling around, and I give him $20 on his birthday. I mean, I try to treat him like he's one of our own. I'm always like that. I don't have to formally adopt anybody to adopt it because my wife had a second child that didn't work out with her relationship, and I adopted her. She was 5 at the time. Anyway, he turned out to be very studious. The family that he was living with ended up putting him into college. He went to college, and he enrolled into the Air Force, um, military Air Force, and became a military officer. And he became a JAG, which is the sort of the agency that takes care of lawyers that deal with problems in the military. And so he's risen into the ranks. He's a family guy. He has children, our grandchildren, and he has a wife who's also an attorney. And they're still in the military, and I can't really tell you where they're at or where, but they go places all over Alabama, Japan, and so forth. But he has an interest in life and his stuff, and he has children. So he's He's a guy that was born out of rape. That a lot of people say that he should have been aborted. Abortion. I don't want to go there because it's a real touchy subject. But abortion should not be a form of birth control. It should not be, and sometimes it's really lax. Um, and I'm kind of on the border, pro-life, pro this, pro that, because I think it should not be a form of birth control. There's people that love to adopt children, and children can turn out to be something great. They can be something really, 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 really great. And so, um, with that being said, uh, my upper older family, there is another daughter, the one I told you about at 5, and she has become a counselor, uh, and she counsels students in high school, and she has a really great job. And she is married. They have a home. She's successful, and she has several children herself. So we have 2 children with my son and with our son, and 2 with our daughter. That's 4 grandchildren, and then on top of that, they're successful. The third child was my firstborn, and I'm sad to say that my first wife took her away when she was 3 years old and made up some stupid story that wasn't true and brainwashed her to think her dad was no good. But she is married. I don't know if she has children, and she's a school teacher. And I've been following her as best I can. She went to the same school I went to, and so did my other daughter did too. Went to the same school. So these 3 children are very successful. Uh, no problem with CPS with any 3 of them. Granted, my daughter who was 3 at the time, she's now 33. Um, she has not seen me since then. I keep hoping that she would, but it's sad about how people are vindictive, how people are very, very vindictive. And that's how a lot of these allegations get started. A family gets jealous. My wife's family was very jealous of me uh, marrying their daughter and then creating a family of our own. We had a beautiful home close to the beach. It was a very pricey home. It was based on my income, and that's one of the mistakes in life is that I made it, you know, our living based on my income. My wife didn't have to work because taking care of the 3 younger children was a lot of work, and even one of the older children was living at home with us. The girl was the one that was 5 that's now 36. Now, anyway, um, I had a beautiful home, and unfortunately, I lost that job, as explained earlier. My world was going through hard times, and I wasn't involved in CPS right away. It wasn't until about 5 years later that I got involved with them. But I was trying to get a job, and see, my age, at 60, it's hard for people to want to hire somebody because they think you're gone. You think you're going. Um, I've been working. I still work. I'm 74 now, and yes, I did lose a job recently, but I will find work again, and I'm determined to work. Why do I have to work? Well, I didn't somehow do my retirement very well. When they cut your retirement in half, it's a lot of money. And when you work as long as I have, I have a lot of money in Social Security, several $1,000,000 in Social Security, but they won't give it to you at all at once. They don't let you invest it. The federal government uses Social Security, which I think is wrong. The federal government should give you the interest on that money, and if you want to take all the money at once when you retire, you should be able to. Of course, they're kind of doing the old thing, and that's why our government just extended to February, not going bankrupt. They always are bankrupt, and they will be bankrupt because they don't know how to work within their means. And it's not that necessary, but you know, they want to use my Social Security to finance CPS, finance Social Service, finance it. I have nothing wrong with my money being used. I think it's important, but I think of other things. I think we should pay a strictly 10% every year, and it should be taken from your pay period right away. At the end of the year, you don't have to worry about it, and no breaks, whether you're rich or poor, whatever it is. It's 10%, 10%. So you give a dime to the federal government every time you do there, And the federal government's got to help out the states, and the states got to raise their own money, which they do in the form of tax, gas tax. That is really a lot of money in sales tax and stuff. So we shouldn't have to pay any state tax, and we should only pay 10%. And again, that's my thoughts, and I'm not trying to be advocate of tax here. But anyway, um, my retirement and access to my thing, and I didn't get that really until I got involved in CPS, where I had to get money because I had to get an attorney. And that is the number one mistake that most people make, is a delay or not getting an attorney. And if they do get an attorney, they're stuck with a public defender. They're stuck with a public defender. And at this time, I like to make another uh, announcement about our attorney, Vincent W. Davis. He's a professional family law attorney with many, many years' experience of getting your kids back. He's also a trial attorney, and he's available for free consultation of 30 minutes up to an hour, and he'll talk about the strategies of how to get your kids back, how to fight CPS, and how to win. He has won cases. He won my case, and I got two of my children back, to two boys. My one daughter, uh, sadly, was. We'll talk about her later, but he is available. To get a hold of him, it's 888-888-6582. That way, if you um, want to speak to them, they'll set up a time. That's the office. That's not my number. And you make sure you say my name, Bob Pace, and that way he knows that you've listened to me on the show and so forth. And if you like him, retain him, because he's worth every dollar you give him. He does have a retainer fee, and it varies. It's more expensive to go up north. It's more expensive to go in other states. He can practice in other states, and he, sets it up there. He's reasonable, and it's well worth the dime. You have to either take a mortgage on your home, get a credit line, or get a family or a family's friends to help, because you need that money. You need that attorney to save you. Now, also, you all are listening right now, and today we have no guest speaker, and I appreciate you. If you want to talk, we'd love to have you. Um, I have a number that you can call in right now and talk on talk radio. It's 563 999 3480. And you call in, and I'll let you talk on the show via the speakerphone and into the show there. If you want to be a guest speaker and arrange a time that you want to speak, that number is 888-888-6582. The same number that reached Vincent Davis. That's the office number. Make sure you mention my name, Bob Pace. Also, you can type in a question, and I'll read it. I had two people from Utah type in some questions, and I read them and answered as best as I could with them. I'm not an attorney, but I have a wealth of information about CPS, and I know it firsthand. I know it firsthand. I was involved with it every day of trying to get my children back in reunification and so forth. And the thing is that I was going through looking for work, and it's very hard because, and right now they're even talking about that the two candidates for president are too old to run for president. I mean, they're even trying to disqualify one candidate because they think he did something bad. Or, I mean, we as American people should vote who we want. If we want to write in somebody, we can write them in. We should not be told who we can vote and who we can. They have the primaries, in which that means there's delegates, and they're the ones that determine who the candidates are. But as you know, there's other candidates can run for president. You can write in and exercise your vote, but make sure you go out and vote. Voting is so important, and the reason why I mentioned voting, it's elections for judges, and I'm bringing this up because the judges in our family courts are terrible judges. They're not experienced. My judge, in my case, was um, a property uh, judge background, meaning that he knew all about collisions and car accidents and stuff like that, but he knew nothing about how to repair a family. And another thing about the courts here, the courts, what I went through, and I hear from other people the same thing. Um, you're not allowed to really sit in the court while your case is being discussed. You're brought in at certain times for a minute or two to say, "Do you understand what we're doing?" And it's really hard because the judge, my judge, didn't know about half the stuff, and he went on the assumption that the public defender that was making deals with the social worker. You have to understand is that when you get into this whole nightmare with CPS, there is attorneys for each child. So I had 3 attorneys for my 3 children. There's an attorney for mom, attorney for dad. That's 5 attorneys. Then social workers usually have one attorney for the social worker, and then there is the therapist and the counselors. And then there's the judge. Of course, a judge has a bailiff and a clerk that's taking notes and so forth. And but you're not allowed in the audience. There is a thing you could sit, but you're not allowed. And I think that should be changed. And I was talking about elections. You know, we need to get a judge that is have family law a judge and vote for him in March. But we need to get rid of the judges that are corrupt. They're not there for families, um, and not to protect the family, to take the parents and money making. This judge, my case, had luncheons with the social workers, with the attorneys. He had golf. He had stuff. So it was already there's so many things in my case that was wrong and negative. And again, you should be allowed to be in there. That's where you got to change the law at the state level, and change it so that parents can be there. Also, the allegations is a serious area where people have a tendency to make allegations, but they don't have to sign their name, don't have to do it in writing. I think that all the professionals or non professional people that make allegations should put it in writing and sign a name. That name does not have to be disclosed to anybody, okay? But when someone's told to put something in writing and sign their name to it, then it'll be more sincere. A lot of times the alienation takes place, and the one parent or one family member, in our case, my wife's mother and sister, her sisters, she had 3 of them, were working against her family. They're the ones that were calling in. And her sister, older sister, the one that didn't protect her, that got raped, was a social worker. And so maybe she knew some things to screw things up. But we couldn't understand why we're getting all those reports. And another thing at the beginning, um, I started, when I lost my job, I started to get these calls coming in because family members were saying we weren't taking care of our children, and they were trying to say things that weren't true. And so I would meet them outside at my car, but I never have them walk onto my property or into my house. I knew better than that. Um, but um, you know, people don't know this, but your house is your castle. And what I mean by that, no one can come into your house unless they have a court order signed by a judge, specifically has your name and has what they're looking for. They just can't walk in there. Social workers can't do the same thing. They use it as a dupe because they want to see and they want to somehow misread or misinterpret things. Another thing is that when I uh, lost my job, we were on a Spartan budget, meaning I had to let the landscaper go. I couldn't take care of the yard or the pool and things like that. So things did need some maintenance things, but they were outside. Also, the same thing that I lost my money, lost my job, I lost half my retirement, lost my money, and that was because of the stocks and the company was investing. The board that was investing did poor choices. My parents were dying. My parents in their late 80s, and they were not long to live, and they had a home. They had a beautiful home, and they asked me if, and they wanted to get rid of their house. They wanted their belongings to be given to family members, and of course, I'm a loving guy and a guy. I'm a loving father, and I love my parents dearly. I still miss them. My dad, this month, will be 99 years old if he was still alive, and he was a great man. He was, I mean, he had a military service in the Navy, He fought in World War II. He fought in Korea. He fought in Vietnam numerous times in Vietnam and so forth. And he had some really great experiences. Um, we lived in Washington. I met several presidents. He worked for the Secretary of Defense, and he he was a remarkable man. I mean, he growing up and everything, and his dad was in the Navy, and I wanted to do the same thing. My dad said, "Well, it isn't declared war, so you stay in school, do better in school than want to jump into the military." And I wanted to be in the military after college, um, but they had a draft when I was back in the '60s. You were drafted, and I went for action physical, but they said that are you allergic to things? I mentioned poison oak, poison ivy, that kind of thing, and bee stings. Oh, nope, we don't want you in. It's not declared war. So I got a 1Y and was to finish my college. At that time, I was pursuing aerospace engineering. I wanted to be involved in the space program going to Mars. And that's something my boys expressed interest later on, which surprised me. Um, so uh, I try to take care of my parents, and so I take all their belongings, and I live in a private uh, neighborhood. It's with CC&Rs, and they don't allow you to put things in storage in your front yard, or in that case, I put things on the carport apron to put my cars elsewhere. And so I had it covered with tarps. Looked very professional and stuff, but they're real sticklers. They're more concerned about the degree of elevation of your rain drain gutter than they are worried about what's going on in your life. Everybody has. It's like an old Indian saying. You don't know about somebody until you travel in their moccasins. When you're in their moccasins, in their steps, and you know it. I would wish somebody would spend a day with me and see what I go through, because everybody has the same picture, and you guys are all fighting, with this family disruption here, and I'm sitting there without an attorney and so forth, and they used a trickster of me. The allegations were coming in and so forth, that finally CPS uses the local police, and they abused it. They made up a false story and said it's vital that they come and inspect the house because the kids were in danger. They somehow thought there was something awful going on with our kids. They first tried to get our kids at school. They came to school. By the way, there's nothing stopping CPS from interviewing your kids at school. But parents are brought in to wait in a separate room. And that's what we did. And when they got through with our kids, they said there's nothing involved, that the kids are sharing, that they're being abused or neglected or sexual exploited. And so um, that he says is that I'm in what's called the allegation, and then it goes into the investigation mode. And the school was very embarrassed because we're good parents. We with our kids all the time. We drop them off at school. We meet their teachers at teacher meetings. We go to open houses. We go to school functions, plays, and musicals and sport things. The kids were heavily involved in Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Girl Scouts. They played sports like soccer, and I worked as a intermediate ref in soccer, and my wife did too. And we would, our kids were very much involved, and we would take them camp, and we were very much involved for kids. When I was working, we had Disneyland passes, and so it was always fun on Friday nights to go to Disneyland. And that's expensive to have those passes. And granted, I had to stop them, and that was one of the things the kids were complaining that, oh, we don't have Disneyland, we can't go anymore, we can't go on trips. Yes, we were living a very Spartan lifestyle, and it was getting bad after 5 years, and so that's why the her parents were getting involved on. Oh, there's a message came in here. Sandy Draper, my husband and I live in Washington State. My niece has been in foster care in SBDNO, California, since 19. We've done everything the social worker has asked us to do. I've asked for a waiver of the 1998 conviction. Um, so I assume that you want to have your kids returned to you, um, and but they're in foster care. Do you still have legal custody of your children, or has the custody been turned over to social workers because they have in foster care. Sandy, if you could tell me that, I'd try to help you. Sandy from Washington has typed in a message, and I'm trying to help her there. Sandy, if you want to talk on the show, you can call in right now at 563 999 3480, and I can let you talk if you like to talk. Um, you have to understand, you mentioned foster care. Foster care can be bad for kids, and in my place, in places I've heard, they abuse kids. And they're making wheels and deals, and they get money. This money thing, you have to understand, is that anytime a child is brought into the system, the the agency gets money from the federal government and from the child until they're 18. So they want to keep them in the system. They want to put them into foster care to get adopted. Their goal is to have them get adopted because they're paid to the child's 18. And so, um, when my kids were taken from me, the first step was they put them in the shelter. They're taken from my wife and I, and they're put in a shelter. And then several days later, we have a meeting for a plan what to do with the kids, because the kids are supposed to be put with a family member or some type of other arrangements. And at first, they're with a family member, but that family member found it was very difficult to take care of three children that require so much going to school, different schools. One was in elementary, one was middle, one was in a private high school, and they required homework, and there was a Cub Scout meetings and Boy Scout meetings and Girl Scout meetings. There was soccer practice. There's a lot that goes in, and we as parents raise our children. And CPS was only interested in one thing in my case, was how to destroy the family and take the money. There was nothing positive that came out of CPS. And I'm afraid that woman there from Washington, that your children are in foster care, it's not going to be positive. Now, you said a conviction. I don't know if that was a criminal eviction or eviction by family service, but if you have an attorney and you need to get an attorney, that attorney can help you get your children back. Nothing's too late. So in my case, when I finally hired Vincent W. Davis, he got my two boys back. He lost my daughter, but he got my two boys back. And my daughter was brainwashed that she divorced her parents. Um, she never saw me when she was stolen by CPS, and she had limited visitations with her mother, and then she stopped seeing her mother, and of course she wasn't seeing her brother. First, they're putting a group home, so they're two together. Well, I said first they're in a shelter, and by the way, the shelter they put in is terrible. It's next to the court, which is nice and convenient for the courts, but the shelter is next to a prison right there, and on top of that, they go out in the play yard. There's a beehive and attacked by bees, and it isn't safe. They weren't protecting the children in the shelter. It was miserable. They had their own room at my house, and the room they had was clean and organized in its own castle. They had food in the refrigerator, food in the house, and so forth. The allegations that they were trying to make were eventually all disproven, but there was one thing that through the investigation they came across on was my parents' belongings. I had to move them inside the house, so I had my parents' belongings. It looked kind of cluttered, but it was organized. But to them, that was excuse. When I showed up, and they tricked me because there was a detective from the police department that CPS got a hold of, and he followed me when I picked up my son, my youngest son, from elementary school for 5 miles. And I guess I didn't know that they can't pull you over. Unmarked people cannot pull you over. They tried to, I guess, where like is, but there's laws to protect you. That's again, a lawyer is the one that knows how to navigate the laws. He knows everything. That's what we went to school for. So it's very important you get an attorney. And at that time, I should have. At that time, I didn't know it being. I mean, when I first started getting investigated by uh, CPS Social Service, that's when I should have called an attorney, and he would tell me what to do and what I can not do and stuff like that. And I could have told him, because when they pulled me over 5 miles, it was a black and white guy that made a U-turn that the detective flagged me down. And of course, a black and white unit, you have to stop. And he came up to me and I said, "How can I help you, officer?" And he says, "Well, did you know you ran a stop sign?" I said, "Well, there was like 5 lights I've been. I mean, only stop sign I know is where near my son's school." Well, there's a guy behind you to explain to you about it. He could not even cite me because he didn't witness it. I should have told him right then, either write me a ticket or let me move on. I did not have to. I mean, I was thinking that law enforcement, government agencies are honest. There's no corruption. But I'm finding out that there's corruption and honesty, integrity are not the words anymore. Um, our local police, they work hard. Police are important, but somehow their integrity and the transparency and law enforcement has really gotten bad. I know that the policemen are underpaid and have a hard job. But my case, they were abusing me. They were abusing me because here's a guy, because he lost his job, because he was taking care of his dying parents, and the family members were jealous and making false allegations. And by the way, you are guilty with a false allegation until you're proven innocent. It isn't like other criminal matters where you're innocent till you're proven guilty. In the family service, all they have to have an allegation. It doesn't have to be truthful, but you're guilty. You are so guilty because they've gone from one extreme to another. They've gone from protecting our children who are being abused, who through physical neglect or whatever, drugs and whatever things, they now think all parents are bad and all allegations are truthful, which is far from it. Allegations are not truthful. So anyway, this detective insists me to follow him to my home. He said, I have to go in home. I said, what did I do? Is there something wrong with my home? Is my home on fire? You know, he was duping me. He was using tricksters. And that's what I don't like about policemen. They're not transparent. One thing is, if you learn the law and learn the law, when a policeman pulls over, you have the right for an attorney right then and there. You can sit there and say, officer, I need to speak to my attorney. You also have the right to ask, what are you being pulled over for? And I could have just asked for a ticket and drove on and picked up my wife. But instead, I followed the detectives and the, rights to the house. When I got there, there was 5 firemen, 2 code enforcement, 3 social workers, and 2 uniformed policemen and the detective. That's a lot of people at my house. Why are they there? I think, oh my goodness, did I do something that would warrant all that? And all it was a dupe that CPS was using to trick to get into my place. They looked over the fence and saw my parents' belongings. I had to move them inside, and I put the tarps over them. The yard wasn't sharp and clean because I didn't afford the landscaper. So it looked a depressing sight. And the house, when they came in, yes, one thing I noticed that I was trying to save my house, and I had somebody that wanted to get my house, and he broke the door to get into my house. I could not believe the policeman did nothing about that. They ripped out my electrical box. These people, they're in my house, by the way, right now. They use tricksters and stuff, forced me to sell my house. And the police didn't protect me. So the door is broken. So they see that, they walk in and they have their combat boots. They're leaving all kinds of trash and dirt from their boots all over my clean house. And they saw the boxes. And they said, well, the boxes could hurt the children. I said, how could they hurt? My children are taller than the boxes. The boxes are steep and they're not piled more than 3 high. So even an earthquake, they may or may not fall. But, trying to argue with them, they're looking for things. The firemen were sitting there with measuring tape, measuring my smoke alarms, make sure they're mounted in the right place. They're looking for everything. Like, is the door locked to the pool with a chain? Is there a gate around the pool? There was. They couldn't find anything. All they could find was neglect to the children because of my parents' belongings and the house, the door, and the house didn't look, the yard didn't look as sharp as it is. It was sad. Instead of maybe saying, hey, this guy looks like he needs help. He says he's lost a job. Why don't we help pitch in and get his stuff into storage? That would help. Why don't we send some guys over to clean up the yard? That would have helped. And again, that'd be cheap and it'd be the same fix. Or tell me and maybe I could get the money to get those things done. But they didn't want to work with you. They wanted to dupe it. And right away that day, they took away my 3 children. It was terrible. Traumatic. You've all out there experienced that. Oh, we have another message here from Sandy. Okay. We had Zoom visits last year, and CPS says my husband was drunk one visit after the fact. He was not. And California never contacted Washington for the ICPC. So Washington sent back to us. Yeah. All I can tell you, Sandy, is you need to get an attorney. You need to get an attorney, and that attorney is we have on the show here, and that attorney, by the way, and I'll say his name one more time, is Vincent W. Davis. He can be reached at 888 at 6582. He is a licensed professional family law attorney with trial experience. He has lots of experience getting children back. He can fight CPS. He has done lawsuits against CPS. He has a law firm. He'll handle other cases and so forth. And he'll give you a free consultation for 30 minutes up to an hour of the strategies of fighting CPS. If you like him, then retain him. He'll be worth every dollar you give him. So make sure you mention my name, Bob Pace. So, Sandy, you need to call that number, 888 Um, Also, if you want to call in and be a guest on the show, call that same number, 888 That's my office number. That is not my own direct line. Right now, I'm using block radio for live callers that want to call in right now at 563 999 3480. It won't be on much longer because we're getting close to the end of my show. You're probably, I don't know if you're interested in how my case went, but it got worse and worse because they were they weren't helping me. They were not helping you, and they lie and they lie and they lie because they want money.
I'm here.
So, oh hi, is this Sandra?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm putting you on the show right now. Um,
Okay, that'd be great because I have kind of a long story, but it's real crazy.
well, here's my problem is I got about 4 minutes, but I'll let you talk for 4 minutes.
Yeah, let's do this.
And then after that, I want you to call back in at 888
Yes,
so you be our guest speaker. Okay?
yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes, sir.
All right. Go ahead and talk.
Okay. My husband and I live in the state of Washington. My husband is retired from schooling, and he has Social Security, so pension and Social Security. My niece applied to Social Services CPS in 2019, and I moved down to California for the court date. Excuse me, and I wasn't even acknowledged, but they gave the children to their biological father, which they never met, and he had multiple convictions for drugs and whatnot on his record, and they gave him a drug test, and he failed it. Yeah, I saw the court, and he failed it, but they still gave him the children. Okay, so about a year later, children get taken from him because he molested so they called me in Washington, and so I said, yes, I still want the children. So we lost the classes in the community, lost the teaching, lost everything. We did the class here in Washington, and got our ICC packet all ready to Washington State, just waiting for California to open up the ICC so we could do the home visit. Home visit was never done. Um, so we had video visit Zoom for a few months. Everything went well, and then the CPS worker asked children if who they want to live with. The foster family that was with them that they were with, or with Aunt Sandy in Washington. Well, she said that the children said they wanted to stay with that family, and the children, the twins were 5 and the second was 9 by this time.
Sandra, I'm
And
going to have to say the block radio is on a timer, and there's only about 5 seconds there. So what will happen is
I need Lily. I want the eldest. I want the eldest back, and I
yeah.
don't know how to get her back, get her to Washington.
Well, you promised me you'll call in so you'll be on the show tomorrow or the next, oh, actually tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday on that, and
Yeah.
we can do that because the block radio will probably cut off. I think it's something new I'm trying. It's something new I'm trying because yeah, call 888-888-6582.
Okay.
But anyway,
Do that, Bob.
Yeah, I want to thank you very much for calling in, Sandra. I'm sorry it's been so difficult time, but to hang in there. And all you listeners, I'm going to be closing off the show. That I want all you listeners now to hang in there. Don't give up on CPS. Do not give up on CPS. They are a hard agency. They lie and they cheat and so forth, and you need an attorney to navigate through them. Don't forget all the Native American Indian children. I talked about that at the beginning of the show. The ICWA. If you have a Native uh, American Indian child, the tribe will take care of their own. The government steps out of the way, but you got to enforce that and so forth. So again, all you out there, I hope that you have a very successful and a very happy New Year. And I hope that if you're trying to get your children back, get them back and try your best, but make sure to hire an attorney. So thank you all for listening, and this is Bob Pace signing off.